I'm now joined by SANEF Executive Director Reggie Mwalusi. Reggie, a very good afternoon to you. So, of course, this is part and parcel of a SANEF, summit with other stakeholders involved. A number of discussions and issues that have been identified here and challenges. So speak to us about just some of the voices, particularly around issues of dis and misinformation that the media is currently facing. We also come at a very interesting time in terms of geopolitical uncertainty.
No, look, thanks for having us, Unathi. The issues of disinformation and misinformation are continuous, but what we have done with the M20 now is to really say we need to talk about the issue of information integrity. And the issue of information integrity is what the M20 has identified. It's not only a global south matter, it's a global north matter. And as you may know, we as South Africa being, the host of the G20 presidency, we also say these issues cut across our continent, and they are there. And they are issues that continue to affect us, to affect not only us and our reputation, but also they affect the public trust that our audiences need to have on us. So that's what we are discussing here. That's what we want to also incorporate in the declaration that we will take to the G20 Sherpas to say this is our declaration as the M20, and these are the matters that we put on the table to say the G20 should consider. But the issue of information integrity as a public good, as a public trust, centering the media there, is also on the table.
Of course, we know that there are a number of issues that affect and threaten information integrity. You mentioned declaration. That's an important one because we know, of course, the Leaders G20 Summit happening in November is crucial. Just speak to us about just some of those key focus issues that will be contained in that declaration. I know that there's a panel discussion. I think it's around 4 o'clock actually, where you will be discussing the declaration. A lot of focus, of course, on the next steps.
Look, man, we are sitting at over 50 organizations that have contributed and signed up to the declaration. I mean, one of the organizations is African in Women Media, who are saying to us, you cannot have a declaration without involving the issues of women in the media and the challenges that they face. But also in that declaration, you'll also find that we are discussing issues of media viability and sustainability to say what is the future of the media going forward. We are discussing the issues of AI in our newsrooms. What's the position of AI? We are discussing as part of the policy paper, but we also incorporated that in that declaration to say the issue of children and how we as the media see children and reporting. Earlier on, we discussed the issue of platforms, to say platforms, whether it's search and social media platforms, they need to have a responsibility and a working relationship with us. You saw today, TikTok was here, Google has been here, and we are having those conversations to say we as the media and what we operate within our ecosystem, we need to also incorporate search and social, but we need to work with them. As we work with them, we need to say we are coexisting, but as we coexist, there are other issues of information integrity, whether you are talking children, you are talking usage, you are talking issue of viability or issue of profitability. Those are the conversations that we need to have, and the declaration, taking it to the G20 leaders, will be part of that.
And I want to just, as we wrap up our conversation, touch on that issue of viability and sustainability of the media in South Africa, specifically young journalists looking at this M20. Also, of course, understanding that we have media houses that have had to shut down because of funding models, but also because there has not been any viable, sustainable structures, for those media houses, which is a concern. It's also a threat if you look at it widely from a journalistic perspective, also affecting information integrity. I mean, how concerned is SANEF around that, particularly as you look at the people in the room?
Look, man, the people in the room, they came here they came here knowing that SANEF, as you know, South Africans, we are talking about the Journalism Sustainability Fund. We saw that Google with the AIP, they came up with the Digital News Transformation Fund. That's all well and good. But the issues of sustainability, particularly with young people, how young people see content, how they produce it, we're saying we need to center that issue there. We need to talk about the funding models of the media. We need to say the old conservative funding models of the media that used to exist are no longer there. So the conversations we've been having is to say, how do we redefine these funding models? Where are the new revenue streams? And how do we speak, whether it's the private and the public sector, to say media viability is important? And these are the questions that young people who are participating through our universities are saying, but where are we involved and where's our voice and how can we contribute towards the solution?
Especially when you consider that community media spaces are also crying out loud because of the funding model. But Reggie, thank you so much. Really do appreciate your time. Of course, we continue then having conversations. I'm going to call my next guest onto the discussion, and that is a special rapporteur on freedom expression, Garisha Topsy Sono. Ma'am, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. So, of course, we've been talking about, various challenges that the media is facing. Speak to us about the areas in which you focus on, and particularly the interesting conversations that you particularly want to highlight.
So I'm a special rapporteur with the African Commission of Human and People's Rights. I'm the special rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information. So yesterday I addressed the audience about the information integrity, and I stated that in fact it has to be maintained at all costs. So the Commission has passed 3 resolutions, Resolution 620, 630 and 631, which is on the website of the Commission. And 620 is about everything that is to do with data access. 630 is about fact-checking and platforms, and 631 as well is about platforms.
And I want to talk about that second one that you mentioned, fact-checking. I mean, how important is this for newsroom, particularly when you look at the threat of AI-generated deep fakes? It is of concern, and citizens are really going everywhere to find that information. How do we become the credible news source as media?
Fact-checking is very important. It has to be maintained at all costs, independent fact-checking. And in fact, fact-checkers are using AI to get deep fakes, but then the speed at which deep fakes are going, it's sometimes difficult to use AI only. So independent fact-checking is most important, especially in Africa.
When you look at just the important role of journalists and journalism as a whole, particularly when it speaks to democracy, I mean, given the fact that we are operating now under very tough geopolitical times, there's conflict everywhere, there's a threat also to media safety. What are the avenues here, particularly given the declaration that will be signed after this M20 heading to the Leaders Summit? What is important and what needs to be contained in that declaration?
Journalist safety is of utmost importance. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights has always stated that it is of utmost importance because this is where free flow of information goes. And where there's free flow of information, then everything goes right. But what has to go in the declaration is for everyone to understand that journalists have to be able to exercise their profession freely and independently. But I hope that the declaration highlights this.
How confident are you that looking at the G20 leaders, I mean, these countries are not obligated, to implement some of these declarations in their respective countries? How confident are you that this time around that there will be political will, particularly in the southern parts of the nations?
But leaders have to understand that information and the free flow of information that is credible, that is free, is of utmost importance, especially at all times, but especially during election times.
All Right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. Well, Alicia, this is just some of the conversations that we are having here, and we'll unpack this further at 4 p.m. when we do the G20 focus. That's coming up at 4 p.m. And of course, at that time, it will also be the roundtable discussions around the declaration. You would have heard here from our speakers how important some of those issues that will be contained in that declaration going to those leaders at the summit in November and hopefully be implemented, particularly as you look at the challenges that are currently facing the media landscape at this point in time.